welcome to Elvenhome and to this edition, which very much focuses on the work of building the hotel and the scratch building, both of how I'm going to light those floors, some adornments that I've made to each of the floors, and also the work on cutting out the first of the front walls and what that begins to look like, so you get an idea of what the face of the hotel is going to look like. Before we do that, you may remember in the last video that I had an idea that struck me whilst I was recording the video of creating a church school, and I'd said that I'd also ordered a Methodist, a little end Methodist hall, which I managed to pick up on eBay for not very much, I think, which has arrived and is where I was proposing for it to go, which is under the shadow of the hill here, where you have the area of Grey Havens and St Eldar's Church. If I bring this a bit closer to the camera, it's a beautiful little model. I have to say, I don't buy many ready to plant models, but the little end ones I'm really warming to, and it's got a hole in the bottom should you wish to light it. I think you'd want a fairly dim light because there's no internals to the hall at all, but it would look quite good there. This is where I had in mind for it to be. But Stephen Riley got in touch with me after the last video and mentioned to me from his youth that there was a Methodist chapel with a Methodist school attached. I think he may even have attended it. So that got my mind thinking, because you'll remember in the last video I had an idea of the church and the school, and doing a bit of research on the internet. It's quite common for Church of England and Methodist churches to have a common school, particularly primary schools, surprisingly. So I think that's what I'm going to do. And the only question for me now is whether I squeeze the school in down this end, which I could do. I think it would be a bit tight, but not impossible. Or more likely that the chapel and the school will go down to the other end of the layout by the gasworks. So it's whether they want to be under a hill or by a gasworks. So it depends how evil I'm feeling as to which end of the layout I put them in. So thank you very much, Stephen, for the comment. And the church school is on a list of a number of buildings, I realise, that are going to need to be scratch built, unless I can see an existing kit that I can adapt. And so far I haven't come across one. But let's get on now with the scratch building of the hotel, and in particular the Just Plug system and the work on doing the first of the walls. In the last video I said that I would come back when I had completed this central core, put the lights in and had put on the front walls. That really isn't very helpful because you won't see much of what I'm working on here and how I go about doing this piece of work. So what I'm going to do now is talk to you about the work that I've been doing to put the figures in that you see, talk to you a little bit about the Woodland Scenic Just Plug system, which I've started using, and the effect of which you will see in just a moment, and also a little bit about how I went about painting the figures here. So first of all, just to let you see the effect of putting the lighting on, I've lit the first and second floor just with the magic of electricity to turn the lights on, and you can see that they're lit. They look a lot brighter than it actually is. I've got a light providing more light here. I'll just turn that off and you'll get a better view of how much is lit, and you can see that it provides really good light, and that will be on each floor. And I think that's going to be much better for shining through the big window that will sit in front of these floors with the semicircular tower front that you'll see. The Just Plug system that I'm using is really very adaptable. If I just get my hands in here a little bit, you'll see that I can vary the light intensity from nothing to maximum. That's at maximum now. And so I will be able to bring the lights down a bit. By picking this up, you can actually see the lights come into view. But when I lay it down and pull it back, it will go back. The wire is quite stiff, and if I position it correctly, it probably won't be visible from the front of the hotel. Let me just turn the lights back off again so I can take that bit apart because it's not fixed in permanently. And then I can talk a bit about the Just Plug system and the way in which I've put this whole section together. So I'll come back when the lights have gone out. Okay, well, I've taken the back off. It was just fixed on with masking tape. Firstly, just to have a look at how I'm putting the lights through. The nano lights are very fine indeed. I've got another one which I haven't yet fitted in here, which if I put to the back of my finger, if I can get this to focus on my finger, there we go, you'll see how small the light is, which is right on the tip there, just very small indeed. And so what I've been able to do here, on the back of the card, I've put a piece of channeling because I want to be able to run the cables neatly down through the back, so there are not lots of cables hanging around inside. And then at each floor I've drilled a small hole just big enough to pass the nano light through. The light is stuck into a hub. This is the basic kit that you need. You have to buy, well, you have to. I bought the Just Plug power pack, which is currently plugged in. That one power pack will light up to 50 lights. And you do that firstly through these light hubs, and you'll see there's independent control of the brightness of each light from off all the way up to full. That allows you to provide light to 4 lights, and you can number them and do whatever else you want to do there. When you get beyond 4, you have to buy, as I have had to do, because I've got, I think, eventually 10 lights in this building, the expansion hub. And these expansion hubs can be daisy chained together, and each expansion hub can run up to 4 light hubs. So this one expansion hub is enough for me. I think I'll need 3 light hubs to do my 10 lights. And that will run, so the power will come into the expansion hub. Each one of these on here goes off to one of these things. And then from each one of these, I can have up to 4 lights, which are all and every single one of those lights will be independently controlled. It is a very flexible system. It is not a cheap system. But then I'm really going to town on this hotel. 10 lights is quite a lot, but I think it will look good when it's done, and it will give me the degree of control that I want in lighting the hotel. Turning to the, if I move this out the way, turning to the work that I've been doing on the hotel itself, and if I tip you up a little bit, get a bit more light onto this if I can. There we go. You'll see that I've put on here, there's 3 figures there, 2 seated and 1 standing. And they are a mixture of, the standing figures are from the Graham Farish range, standing, station passengers standing. I've only used 3 of those. And those, of course, and you can probably see on each floor, if I bring this in a bit, that there is someone standing on each floor. Those, of course, I think are 1 to 148. Although I've always thought Bachmann figures looked a bit under scale. The seated are from a kit, a prizer kit, which I managed to get on the internet. If I move this back and get this into view, there you go, which is the 79007. Now those are 1 to 160 scale, so they're obviously European scale. Being seated, I don't think it causes a problem. If I bring this back into scale and get this into focus, if I can get it into focus, there we go. I don't think you can really see the difference, largely because the seated figures are sitting down, and so I think if they were standing up you would see the difference in height, but because they're seated and the distance between them, and also remembering you're only going to be able to catch a glimpse of these figures when we finally do it. These come, if I show you the back, these are white, these are unpainted. So I've been having fun doing my painting again, and I'll put up a still here which shows some of the figures after I finish painting them. I have great fun painting these figures. If any of you would like me to do a short section showing how I go about painting them, I'm no expert, this is, but I've followed what other people seem to do. But it's amazing what effects you can get. All you're trying to do, as I say at Engage, is give an impression that convinces the eye that the people in here are suitably dressed. Again, this has gone out of focus. It's really quite hard to get in. Now, let's try this. That's better. The little lady with her yellow hat and her brown dress and her grey cardie and her black shoes, I think. And they're great fun to do. But if you would be interested for me to show you how I go about painting some of these figures, I'm more than happy to do that. So the next thing for me to do, which I'll do as a second section a bit later in the video, is to show the work that I'm going to do to mark up the two front walls, because that's the next thing that's to be done, and cut those out and fit the windows so that we can start having a look. And I've also decided on the colour scheme, and I'll talk you through what the colour scheme will be a bit later in this video. Well, this episode is turning into a bit of a scratch build fest. You may recall in the last video that I'd built the carcass of a ramp to take the road up to the level of the fire station and the railway. And I decided yesterday evening that I would quite like to finish the carcass off. And this is the result of probably, an hour or so's work, perhaps a bit longer. The carcass, you'll recall, is made, if you've ever made a Metcalf platform, you'll know it's a similar idea. That's obviously the road surface. And in fact, I have used some from the Metcalf platform kits, the thin strips that are used to help you position the platform with the wall of the platform, and then strengtheners in here just to hold the two walls together and to give it some strength. I decided to use the Metcalf papers because I think these are very good papers. I'll put a note up here of which kit number it is to get these papers. In the kit you get both a thick card version and a thinner paper version, maybe a bit thicker than paper. I've used the thick card version here because I think mainly for the buttresses. The buttresses are made just out of the card, but the beauty is you make a piece that's obviously twice as wide as you need and then fold it in halfway. If I take it up, you'll see there it's folded back on itself and glued down. And that gives you enough thickness at end gauge to suggest a serious buttress or a sufficient buttress or support without needing to use a card inner. If I'd have wanted a deeper buttress, then I'd have used the paper version of this card and then just cut some thicker card inside until I had the depth that I want and wrap it round. So the first thing was to cut out the shape that I wanted for the ramp. It's cut out to be scale equivalent of 5 foot higher than the road surface. So that was cut out for both sides. The trickier part was lining the inside because this is not double-sided. Obviously there's already the carcass there, so I didn't really want to use double-sided. So instead I had to cut out the liners to follow the road as it goes down. That required 2 pieces of card to make that work, which is why I needed to have the buttresses inside here to cover over where the card actually joins. And then I used the Metcalf roof tiles. I've used these before or something like them on the because they're not that dissimilar to the capstones that are used for the Metcalf terraced houses, and they just I think they work perfectly well as a kind of capping stones for the top of the road. The trickiest bit actually, getting these to curve around the corners is not that difficult. I just find that you need to make some nicks on the outside curve just to allow the paper to part at that point. It will squeeze up well enough, but it doesn't obviously like getting longer.
The pavement was done in the same way. So you won't actually, oh, you may see them. There's a couple of nicks here. If I bring it closer to the camera, you'll see the nicks in the pavement. And that helps the pavement to just bend. In a couple of places when it got tighter, I also nicked on the inside to allow the paper to come and overlap very slightly. And then obviously you have to hold it while the glue sticks, but that's what I wanted, a pavement only up one side of the road. The road's not that wide, but given this was built in Victorian times, it wouldn't be that wide, you know, but they didn't have great big hulking lorries going up and down. And this was built in the Victorian times. So what I'll do now is, just to finish the video, I'll take this up onto the layout and you'll see where it's going to be positioned, and just quickly talk about the start of the construction of the walls, but also a thought that has struck me today about what might go to the right of this rather than what I'd originally had in mind. Having completed most of the work on the tower, there's still some work on the ground floor that I've got to finish before I can fit the back permanently. It's time to move on to constructing the external walls, and as I've mentioned, the walls are in sections, at least for the purposes of the carcass. So I thought what I would do is just show you how I go about marking up this first wall, and then I will cut it out, put the windows in, and we'll see what that looks like. And at the end of this section, I'll also talk a bit about the colour scheme that I think I'm going to go for the building. So I've already started work on marking up, learning from previous models in which I marked everything up on the outward facing side, which is fine for the purposes of cutting out, but it does give you a bit of a problem in that you've then got pencil marks or something. So this time I've done all my marking up on the inside, the bit that won't be seen. And if I take this building away, because I've already completed the marking up, what will be at the base, although these look very similar, these in fact are slightly larger windows, which are going to be, if I bring my finger up, this style, if I get the right way up, which are really quite tall. They're 12 millimeters. So that's 6-foot windows. That's nice big windows that will sit in the front of the building. And then slightly smaller ones in terms of height, these ones which my finger is under now, and they are also slightly narrower, will sit on the front of the building only, or the bit that can be seen, the front and the side. At the back, it'll be the one that my finger's behind now, this one here, will make up the windows for the back, because those are the cheaper rooms. So that's now what I'm going to do now is I'll stop the video here. I'll cut these out so we can have a look at what that all looks like and fit up the windows, and then we'll get the first view of what the windows will look like looking through here. Well, that took much less time than I thought it would do. I've completed putting the windows in, and it's just taped in place at the moment. If I put this behind it, you'll get a better idea. The one thing I forgot to mention is that I'm keeping one particular blade. I've got a number of knives for doing the cutting, and I'll be changing that blade regularly, because you need a very sharp knife to be able to make neat cuts when you're working in card of this. This is what I think 0.5 millimeter. It's surprising how quickly the blade will get blunt, and once it starts going blunt, I find that cuts start going awry. I've fitted the windows as I said I would. They're slightly different for the top 3 floors to the 2 that are at the bottom, and I've also taken the opportunity to paint them white. They have white primer which I put on. These are brass etch, but I found when I put this in places the primer would come off, and in very small places the glue which is sticking them on was showing through. So it made sense just to give them a paint of white, and that's also enabled me, because I've done it very carefully with a fine brush, to paint the edges of the cuts so that it's the same white colour as the windows behind. I said I would also mention the colour scheme that I think I'm going with. If I move this out the way, I went and got a choice of some Vallejo colours, but also some Tamiya paints. and I've made up, you'll see here, I just made up 2 lots of the same colours. The first 4 are Vallejo colours, and I was quite surprised. The yellow has a real zing to it compared to the bottle. The bottle looked much paler, probably because I suspect the pigment has settled. I was thinking about using either of those 2 yellows for the exterior of the building. You'll be pleased to know that I'm not now. The next 2 are Vallejo colours. One is a pale green, let's see which one it is, pastel green, and then a darker green, flat green. And the end 2 are Tamiya colours, which is sky, believe it or not, although it looks green to me. Maybe a very light duck egg blue, and then also a green colour. Which one's that? Deep green. Looking at these, I think what I am going to do, and also I've been online to have a look at what kind of exterior colour paints were in use for the Art Deco period, and certainly pastel greens and brighter greens seem to be quite common. So I think what I'm going to go with are these 2 greens here. So that's the Vallejo green and sky. So the walls will be in this colour, and then the window frames, and you'll remember if I go back to my mock-up, which gives you an idea, all of the windows downstairs, the big windows, are going to have these round them, and then a slightly smaller version will be on each window, certainly at the front. For the back, I think I probably will do the same. So I've got a lot of window construction to do, because there's about 40 windows, I think, in total in the whole building. And this will have a slightly different construction on the side. So you would have, I may actually paint this up in just a moment, just to have a look. In fact, that's a very good idea. Well, I have to say I'm quite pleased with that outcome. I'd forgotten that I'd built this, and that is a good way to let me see what it looks like. It's a bit raggedy, of course, because I've had to paint this on the model, whereas in fact I'll build each wall, each window frame, and stick that on later. And it is my intention to have bands going across the centre. You'll remember that was my idea originally, which will also be painted in this dark green. So I think that will help break up what would otherwise be a very large expanse of the pale green. So that was a bright idea striking me, and I'm quite pleased with that outcome. So the next thing for me to do, as I was saying, is to cut the other side of the front section, prepare the other sides. I'll see how much of that I decide to video, because it's very similar. But as I say, I don't want to rush on too far ahead, so you're wondering how on earth did he do that. So I probably will cut the other sides out, but then we won't be far off actually thinking about assembling some of this. So let's go on to the next section of this week's video. Here you can see the ramp sitting on the layout. I had a very useful comment from Chris Carter, just questioning where did I really want the ramp here, and I have played around with moving it further to the left, but I think I am settled in my mind that the gasworks works best in that left-hand corner, and that therefore, if that's where the gasworks is going to be, the ramp is better coming through this third arch here from the left, this one here, than it is through any of the others. So I started yesterday to cut from 3mm foam board the retaining walls that will go, originally was going to go both to the left and the right of the ramp. This piece here that will be on this L shape here needs to be removable, because that board that's there can be removed if I need to make changes to the point work that's sitting there without causing mayhem and damage to the rest of the layout. When I came to put the L shape in here, it looks very boxy and very unrealistic. I may still do something in this corner, I'm not sure. So what I have in mind to do is to extend the landform a little bit here to give me a bit more space, so I can extend these sidings a bit longer. That will allow me perhaps to store some wagons or something in there. and then have the landform drop in an embankment just short of this ramp, as if the ramp has been dug out of what was a longer extension, essentially, when the road was built to be able to take heavier vehicles. I think that will actually help that whole area and break up the boxiness a bit. I'm going to live with the walls as they are rather than rushing on and finishing them, because it's still, maybe I do need to think a bit about breaking that corner so that it's not quite so severe, but we'll see. A lot depends on the space I need to be able to fit the gasworks in, and it's perfectly possible that it was all squared off to be able to fit the 2 gasometers on the land that was available and was dug out for that purpose. Well, that pretty much wraps up this edition of Elvenhome. I hope you've enjoyed it. It's been a bit of a scratch building fest, as I said. The next video will also focus on the hotel and getting on with cutting out the remainder of the windows and fitting them for the front of the building. And I think then we will actually fit those parts to the front of the building. And I've still got to quite work out how I'm going to get all the different bits to stick together and be nice and square. So we'll go on that journey together in the next video. So until I speak to you again, if you've liked the video, please do like and hit the subscribe button so you get, and the bell notification so you get to know when I'm uploading videos. And please do let me have your comments. They're really so helpful. And they help me to do so many things on this layout, and I've been very grateful for all the comments that I've received. So until I speak to you again, that's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.